Hello and welcome to Talking Reds, a Nottingham Forest podcast, hosted by myself, Greg Oram, and my fellow Forest fan from across the Atlantic, Richard Spray. Sort of something lively was required, Richard, for this pod. How are you feeling, mate? How you doing?
I think that's how my brain feels right now with all this winning that we're doing. The tra-la-las, it's just amazing. Yeah, I'm doing great. How can we not be feeling good? What's just happened? 4 in a row.
Nottingham Forest win again for the fourth game in a row and continue to dumbfound the critics and move into third place in the Premier League. Now, 5 points ahead of fifth place Newcastle. The European Dream Tracker started out as the sort of banter all fans love to get involved in. And at its most serious, it was probably the Conference League that seemed the most likely destination should the dream become a reality. Can Forest fans dare to dream that it could be the Champions League that is coming to the City Ground next season? And can it get really ridiculous with Forest now seriously considered as challengers for the Premier League title? Well, to have a chat with us about all of that, looking back on Spurs and then preview the Everton game as well, we're delighted to welcome back to Talking Reds, Jamie Martin.
Thank you for welcoming me back, guys. It's good to be back. I'm just, I can't even believe the position that we're in, because I've always believed that Forest one day can get back to the sort of the glory that my dad talks about, because I want to be able to talk about the glory of my generation. We always hear about the glory of the previous generation of Forest fans, which is so beautiful, and the story of Cloughie is so beautiful, and so even though we weren't there, it almost feels nostalgia when you hear about it, even though I wasn't there. But this is like a new history. This is a new chapter, for us to create something, and what we've got is so special. And the win against Spurs, for me, just as I've said before in other wins, is just it's just sort of a mark on how well we're doing. We've beaten a side that, yes, are out of form, but Spurs score goals. They didn't score today. A lot down to Matt Selson in defence at times, but this team is so well organised and he's so cohesive and he's so put together. I'm fully on board the European train now. I'm going to be honest, Jensen. The conference thing, yeah, I think that was, and it's still, I definitely take that any day of the week because it's amazing. Any form of Europe, I just love. And there is still a large portion of the season to go. But in all fairness, we can aim even higher. Why not? The sky is literally the limit. We're going to secure survival, and we're already over last season's point tally. It's crazy. It's crazy.
It is. We are recording this at just gone 9 o'clock on Boxing Day evening, following Forest's fantastic win at the City Ground earlier today. So we're recording it just because everyone's schedule is a bit all over the place, and we want to make sure we can put something out to mark the Spurs game and look ahead to Everton as well. So by the time you're watching this, it's going to probably be Friday morning-ish, I think. So thank you very much for tuning in if you're coming to it after we put this out, either through YouTube, through Apple, or through Spotify. We would love it if you could hit like and subscribe and join us. We have been trying to get ourselves to 1,000 subscribers by Christmas. By New Year now, it would be really realistic. We are on about 948 YouTube subscribers, that is. So 52 away. Would be an amazing thing for us if you could just jump on and subscribe and come along for the ride. But yeah, Richard, let's then think about the football and let's think about this Spurs game. They were one of the teams we hadn't beaten in the Premier League since we returned. We'd beaten Arsenal, we'd beaten Liverpool, Man United twice now, Newcastle, and Man City obviously is still a team we would like to try and beat. But Spurs were one of those teams we hadn't beaten. And I really felt they were there for the taking. What are your general kind of match thoughts now that you've seen what happened earlier?
Yeah, per usual, the speculation around what our formation was going to look like, right? Coming off of a very different formation that we saw, at least one we hadn't deployed in quite some time, including Murado in the back there, which was very effective against Brentford. And we definitely enjoyed watching that outcome because that's another one of those teams that we couldn't seem to get past since getting to the Premier League and hadn't beaten in ages. So it was great to see these kinds of moments where these sort of barriers that we have starting to come down. We're starting to beat these teams that we should beat, given where we are positionally in the table. So it's a good thing to see. I said just general overall, I was glad to see this get back to sort of the formation that we're used to. It's great to see Morgan kind of get back into a traditional 10 role. Great to see Yatesy back in there featuring, disrupting in the middle. Albeit, with a kind of a silly yellow card early on, but that kind of put him in jeopardy in the match itself. And then obviously he's going to have him out for the next match. But generally speaking, I thought we were front foot from the get-go. I thought we defended beautifully. I thought we didn't allow them to really take advantage of many opportunities. I think they maybe had one big chance in the match in and of itself. They just didn't capitalize on anything. Brennan played very well. But it just as a general whole, it was great to see us be on the front foot from the minute one and not let up and do what we do best, which is to play stout defense and then get on that counter and leverage that pace that we have with Anthony Elanga, leverage that tidiness on the ball and that ability to create from that left side like we see with Callum. And I thought he played fantastic in this match. A couple of moments here and there, but for the most part, he was just really, really disruptive. And so it's great to see. But as a general whole, I thought we really felt like we never at any point let off our foot off the gas throughout the match, which is a great thing to see.
I thought that when the game started in the first minute, Spurs seemed to want to try and make it a quick start, and they almost had an opportunity within that first minute. And really should have had a shot on goal or could have had a shot on goal. And I thought, okay, we've got to really be careful because they are a dangerous team. They can score goals. Their record for scoring goals is there to see as much as it is for them in terms of conceding goals. I think I said to 2 or 3 different people, this game could end up 5-4 either way. I didn't necessarily really at first glance expect, Jamie, that we were going to get a 1-0 win. I'm chuffed with a 1-0 win because I think clean sheets are infectious and we want more of them. But it kind of just goes to show as well, doesn't it, what kind of team we can be compared when it comes to the opposition that we're playing. I think what I'm trying to say is that, we are a defensive unit. We're very strong. We set up in that really strong way. But rather than just trying to hit Spurs time and time again because we know that they're defensively fragile, it felt to me like Forest were willing to take their chance when it came and take their time with it as well and not kind of try and rush it. Obviously, they wanted to carve out more opportunities as well, but it felt to me like it was a mature performance, I think is what I'm trying to say. I was definitely nervous in the second half, but in that first half, we had Brennan up against Neco. I'm interested to hear what you thought about that duel. We had Jed Spence playing back at the City Ground as well. So the Brennan and Jed combination down the right-hand side, which we know all about. So that was interesting to see that. But I really felt that their fragility and the area to attack them was going to be at their centre backs. And it's an obvious thing to say. When you got Dragerson and Gray playing, who are both midfielders, I think. And Gray's, 18, 19 years old. I don't think many Spurs fans expected him to probably be introduced into first-team action so much this season when he first signed. But he's had to go in and he's going into a centre-back. So I felt that was an area we could really maybe make something from. So when we speak about the goal, we can look at that kind of side of things as well. But, in the first 30 minutes or so of the match, and that Neco Brennan duel, how are you feeling about Forest's progress? And did you feel at any point we were in any imminent danger?
Not particularly. I mean, I think the thing is with Brennan is that I know people will obviously say he was crap today, because he's an ex-player, and you sort of, some people just want to kind of put the knife in him a bit and just be like, yeah, I don't like him or whatever. But he's a very, very good attacking footballer. He did a lot, especially down that right-hand side for Forest. And, and the only reason he didn't in the last time we played them, which was the game Cooper got sacked, I think, at the City Ground, was because he got that injury. So, I think that Neco has stepped up when Alex Moreno hasn't been there. Alex Moreno is an experienced professional who's played at the top level in multiple divisions, and Neco's actually worked his way into that position, and now Moreno's going to have to wait for his position to come back. So yeah, I would, naturally Brennan is that sort of player, and he's an ex-player, so you always worry, oh, he's going to score against us today, isn't he? You get that feeling. But Neco fills me with confidence and assurance. And another thing as well, to kind of verge off the point slightly, but Forest have added another dimension to their attack since they added Neco in. Because since Neco's come in, Callum Hudson-Odoi started going in more centrally. Forest are creating incredible overloads, not just on Spurs' defence, but everyone's defence. They're almost attacking with 5 by having Hudson-Odoi, Gibbs-White, Neco, Elanga, and then Chris Wood. And you've still got Anderson behind that. So Neco's adding that other dimension by being the wide man and giving Hudson-Odoi the freedom to do what he likes, and that is just such a beautiful thing. So I think that we can look at Neco defensively and say that he stepped up massively, especially in today's game against really big opponents. But actually, Nuno's crafted his tactics to work around what Neco is best at, because Neco can defend, but we've always said it, that Neco's got that attacking instinct in him where he could almost play as a winger, but he sort of can't, and he's been kind of played around everywhere. And do you know what? I think that we found the perfect way to play Neco Williams, and and that the credit goes out to Nuno for that. But against Brennan Johnson today, other than a couple of chances which obviously Self's dealt with well, I'd say that he had a really, really good game. And yeah, Moreno, good luck winning your spot back, mate. I love you, but he's such a player, Neco is.
Yeah, I think Neco has shown that he is up for a challenge, because last season he was out of the side under Cooper. And I remember when Nuno came in that Neco had really kind of thought, this is an opportunity for me. And he'd gone to Nuno to say, look, what do I have to do to get in your team? He actually asked him outright. And whatever Nuno said to him, Neco worked on it. And when he came into the side, he had 3 or 4 matches in a row where he was the player of the match. He had standout performances. And in fact, even when he was coming off the bench last season, he was making an impact. And he started the first 3, then we brought Moreno in. And I think everyone was thinking, okay, we'll move Ola Aina over to the right side, and then we got a definite left back. Because when Ola Aina and Neco were playing together before, they were playing in the reverse. Ola was playing left back, Neco was playing right back. And so to see them now switch, because Ola, I think, is a better right back. He can play left back, and I think he's the best full back in the division. I know I'm biased, but I just think he is. But Neco definitely seems to enjoy playing that role. He plays it for Wales as well, so he's not alien to that. I thought he had a really good game today. He's stepped up. He wants to keep his position, and I loved the tussle with Brennan Johnson. They're obviously mates, but they obviously were having a little bit of a kick here and there, fouling each other. I really enjoyed the Morgan Gibbs-White impact on the ball, if you like. He wanted the ball. He was coming deeper. He was, some of those balls are coming on the outside of his foot again. The classic Gibbs-White move. I thought he was really kind of impactful in the game, as was Anderson. But the real moment, Richard, was on the 28th minute. So Jed Spence is on the edge of our box. And what I really enjoyed as well, guys, was Callum Hudson-Odoi coming back and tracking back, tucking inside as well. He's been criticised before by me and others for being a little bit dawdly, but he seems to be putting more work in and coming back. So pick it up for us, Richard. We win the ball in the edge of our area. The ball's with Morgan Gibbs-White. What happened next?
Well, I love the fact that it started with a Neco dispossession of the opposing player to Anderson to Morgan Gibbs-White. And I like the fact that Morgan and Anderson both are starting to sort of trend to playing a little bit deeper for defensive purposes, clearly. But also, I think when Morgan gets the ball in that kind of position, he's quick enough to accelerate and get that ball advancing. And his vision is so good that I think it gives him plenty of time. I think I've touched on this, I think in our last episode, maybe, about his vision just being improved when he has more time to survey the field. And the way that the weight of that ball, the positioning of where he put it, it was exactly how it needed to be in order for that goal to be scored as it was. And the fact that he's giving Anthony a lot more opportunities to be a little bit more clinical. He doesn't have to do a whole lot and doesn't have to negotiate too much. He just needs to finish. And I think when he does things like that, it clearly is going to play to his advantage, because look at what he's done the last 3 matches. And you're reaching a point now with Anthony to where if that synergy starts to develop, which we hope it will, Morgan with anybody really, scoring, but especially with Anthony, it puts so much less stress on Chris Wood having to score. It puts less stress on Callum having to score. It puts less stress on looking at our recruitment and how we're going to have to operate in January. Still need some coverage. I think striker's still necessary, but I think just the way that unfolded, it proves that when Morgan puts him in a position, because Dan Scape has talked about this regularly, it's one thing to say Anthony needs to step up his game. He needs to be a little bit more careful, a little bit more intelligent with how he manages the ball, et cetera, et cetera. But I think when you are in that number 10 role, put him in a position to succeed like that, and let him do what he does best, he's gonna be an absolute asset, even more than ever before. And so I hope it continues, but I agree with you. Just everything about the way that ball was delivered was just prime Morgan Gibbs-White, and what we'd love to see from him game in and game out. And it's great to see him sort of, doing what he does best.
So this guy has had criticism. I've been critical of him. I said we possibly should have taken the money from Newcastle. I don't mind having egg on my face. I said prove me wrong, but it's so good to see the smile on this chap's face, Jamie.
Yeah, I love it. And do you know what? I think the one thing that people have to be really careful of is to not interpret our criticism, because I'm sure that it's the exact same criticism between us, as insult, because it isn't the same thing. Any Forest player that puts that shirt on, regardless of whether I wanted them to join the club, thought they were good enough, or think they're good enough, I want them to do well, because we all support Forest, and them doing well means we will do well. So I've been heavily critical of Elanga's form at the end of last season and the start of this season. I thought it's been really poor. But the one common denominator for me was that he just needs to get a goal, because you can tell that he's clearly got a confidence problem more than anything. And you know what? I think so many wingers struggle with that, because you're in a position where your job is 1v1s and it's runs like that. If you aren't doing that every week, people are going to have their eyes on you. And it's one thing that I think Brennan struggled with when he was at Forest, was confidence. And for me, Anthony got that goal against Villa to win the game, and from there it was just, that set him off. And do you know what? I don't know how long this run's going to go on for now, but any talk of him leaving, for me, I've said it that maybe we should look at selling him, but I think we should just give him all our support, because
it just goes to show, doesn't it? Sorry to interrupt you, but
it
just goes to show that sometimes when we say, all he needs is a goal to get him going, and people don't really sometimes believe that. And sometimes it doesn't work out that way, I know. But literally on this occasion, all he needed was that goal to get going, and he looks unstoppable. He's running, he's fast, he looks lively. So you're saying that if a bid comes in January, Newcastle come back, because I think they're still interested. Yeah. I felt that we were never going to get that money offered again for him with the form he was showing. However, when you come into December and you hit 3 goals in a row, and they effectively prove to be the winning goals each game, then that gets your price tag back up again. So, Jamie, are you saying then if Newcastle come back with 55 million, are you taking it?
I would have said yes, not even long ago, a few weeks ago. I'm going to say no now. And it's not even just because of the stuff we see on the pitch. It's the stuff we see off the pitch. That chemistry in the changing room, that sort of family aspect that these players have got, I don't want it breaking up. So the answer is no. We don't need to sell players. If we're serious about getting to Europe, let's keep the squad together, keep that spine together, because that's what's doing us so well at the moment. There's so much more to a game of football and a 3 points performance than just simply quality on the pitch. It's about the atmosphere and the chemistry. So, no, I wouldn't sell it.
I think if the club were going to accept that kind of money, they would have accepted it at the start of the season. I can't imagine they'll accept it, Richard, in January, especially where we are. The only way I might possibly look at that is that we still need to sell players at some point. We are going to have to balance the books. If we could go and get Cunha from Wolves, then I'd be all over that. but it's like ifs, buts, and maybes if your mum was your brother and all that kind of stuff. Do you know what I mean? So where are you on the Anthony Elanga debate, Richard?
I tend to align with what Jamie's saying. Yeah, I would have been you and I were in the same headspace, I think, with him. And when we saw that offer come through, we thought, what are we doing? We got to take that. But at the same time, it's such a testament to the guy's work and his effort, because as Jamie said, he had the belief in himself. He said, I can finish. I know I can. And he's proving it now. But I would agree with you. If his value continues to escalate and continues to rise, and we genuinely feel like either we've got something in the players we've recruited in this recent offseason, this summer window, and we feel like we can do it again in the next summer window, to me, that's more of an appropriate time for him to do it, because for one, we might have more time to be able to assess that versus in the January window. And I think, as Jamie pointed out, you run the risk of kind of impeding or impacting the chemistry of the team. And so from my perspective, it just needs to be an augmentation moment with someone else that maybe just provides a little bit of coverage to the striker. If you feel like you're not going to get Danilo and Sangare back, potentially maybe you might consider depth there. I don't know, but maybe a true number 6, another backup number 6 that you can deploy at some point when you feel like that's necessary to counteract whatever the opposing team is. But at this stage, no, I wouldn't let him go. I think you're just going to create too many issues. I think you're going to take what has been such an important part of what we do, which is the culture we have, and you're going to detract from that a little bit.
I was hoping Chris Wood would score today, because I don't like strikers going too long without hitting the back of the net. We know that he's been great for us, and in no way at all do I want this to sound like there's criticism at all. But it's nice that someone else is scoring. If Chris isn't scoring, the worry was where else are the goals going to come from? And so Anthony has stepped up, definitely, as well as Milenkovic and Ola Aina recently as well. So Chris is still doing his work. I'd love him to score a goal, because I think confidence is all about scoring goals, Jamie. But the one player that really does need a goal is Taiwo Awoniyi. And I thought he came on again. He had a cameo. I thought he looked quite sharp, especially when he bustled into the box and had that shot. He looked quite powerful. He's not getting many minutes. I'd love, we haven't got Dan Scape with us on the pod today, for those of you coming and listening late. So no stats, I'm afraid. But I would be interested if Dan or anyone could come up with how many minutes he's been on the pitch this season, because it's not that many. And in fact, I think it was around this time last year that he got injured and Chris Wood came in, because Chris obviously scored the hat-trick against Newcastle. So Taiwo in the last year hasn't really been on the pitch that much in terms of minutes. So if there's a player that needs a goal, I think, Jamie, it's him. But there's talk that he could be a player that Forest do look to move out in January. Where are you on Taiwo Awoniyi?
Well, I think this is his last chance saloon to save his Forest career, unfortunately, this season, because there is no room for sentiment, and I've always said that. And as much as I love Taiwo, it does extend to him as well. But he is in a Forest shirt, so I'm gunning for him to get back to previous form. The thing about Taiwo is, if you can manage his load well, in terms of the injuries and stuff, there is a player there. And as you say, when he came on and he just bullied the Spurs defence, because he's strong. He's a big player. You know what he can do. I think the concern is, do you ever start him? Because you've got Chris Wood there, so it's like, well, why would we start him? I think personally, if you are going to buy a striker in January, that's still a good idea, even if we do have Taiwo. I know that Nuno likes a smaller squad, but I think it's a good opportunity for an understudy to come through. Maybe someone who's 18, 19, 20, someone quite young, but has still got that potential, in the next year to kind of develop. But at the moment, I'm more in the sale camp than I'm in the keep camp, because I do believe that there's we pay him a good wage, so obviously we need to see return on that. He saved us the first season, but other than that, the impact's been really low. So I'm really raring for him to find that form, and maybe him coming on a bit early would be nice. But it's sort of just ifs and buts, really, because this is a sort of question I'd be answering more towards the end of the season. If he can get a goal and maybe he's that super impact sub, then that'd be really nice. But it's tough, because I don't think any of us really want to say goodbye, because he's like that player that saved us that first season and he's given us so many memories. But at the same time, if anything does happen to Chris Wood, is he going to be the man to step up? You know, I still have trust for him, but it's just whether he can stay fit. You know, which isn't really in his hands. So it's really tough, mate. But I'm going to be honest. I'm probably more in the selling bit. But would I sell him in January? I don't think so. I think we should at least give it to the end of the season.
Yeah, just going back to the game. Sorry, Rich, I just wanted to flip back to the game because time's moving us on. At halftime, I messaged you, Richard, I think it was, and said I'd be looking to take Yates off because he was on a yellow, and there was a moment where it looked like he was going to bring someone down, literally like 2 minutes to go in the first half or something. He got involved in something that was a bit edgy. And I thought, we don't want to go down to 10 men. So I was looking to take him off at halftime and bring Morato on because we've made that switch previously. And obviously the Morato switch is something we've spoken about lots. And we're on Morato watch part 2 in terms of minutes on pitch and not conceding. And it's still there. We didn't concede again. I've got a lot of confidence in when we go to a back 3 and how we play in the interchange that we have with the personnel we've got and the way that they shift their jobs and their roles. So when they came out in the second half and we were kind of as is, was I surprised? Not surprised, but I did think, okay, he wants to stick with Yates on the pitch. That's fine. We then, Richard, allowed Spurs to have the ball. Forest allowed, I think, Spurs to have the ball without really kind of them doing too much. You know, we don't mind teams having more possession than us. It's what we do. But we still had our moments when we were, on the break and so forth. But at any point in that second half, I know that Sells made a good save in the first half. It was probably the Johnson save, wasn't it, that came over. So apart from that, it wasn't really any clear-cut opportunities, I don't think. Matt Sells showing again that he's a good goalkeeper, no matter what the stats may say, no matter what lies behind the data. The guy's got his 7th clean sheet of the season, I think it is, which is tied jointly with Pickford at Everton. And he's putting off some great saves still. So we closed the game out with a clean sheet, Richard. Word on Matt Sells and a word really on Spurs as well and their efforts in the second half. Were you worried at all? Am I being too harsh on Spurs? Did they cause us any problems really apart from that Johnson chance?
Not particularly. I mean, I think you're referencing the one where it was off of a set piece. They were just outside the box.
Really well, yeah.
Yeah. And Johnson, turned really beautifully, trapped the ball and pulled it down. Yeah. Outside of that, no. I think they tended to just they would try to advance it. It's not like they weren't attempting to attack goal. It's just there just wasn't a whole lot of options for them. And I think per usual, just like we've seen all season long, probably sans Arsenal and Man City, we really just kept our shape well. We were very compact and particularly in the box, we just didn't allow a lot of balls to get into difficult areas or tight spaces where, their players were on the end of it and then it would put us in jeopardy. But to your point, I mean, when we're in these tight matches, he always seems to elevate his play a little bit. He always seems to come, out with these saves that, we'll let Dan kind of speak to the post-shot XG and look at that kind of stuff and figure out how difficult were those saves really? Are we talking about a very, very complex, I guess Raf calls them worldies that he was able to save, or was it something that's sort of in between? It sort of tended to be somewhere closer to the worldly, but not exactly the worldly. And so, but he just definitely steps up, man, when we need him the most. And when we have these sort of isolated moments, which we reduced those, I think, unforced errors quite substantially compared to our first 2 seasons under Nuno. I just think we're a lot more disciplined in all aspects of how we operate. So and he's one of those. I mean, clearly he's as a former keeper has had a huge impact on him. The confidence that he's given him, the way that he plays, is just so much better. And yeah, you're right. I mean, that second shot by Johnson, beautifully done by Sells as well. It's just something about when these moments get sort of nervy and we start to, because I know I personally was getting a little anxious towards the last probably 7 to 10 minutes of the match. I'm like, oh my gosh, this just feels like they're starting to build and hopefully we'll be able to weather the storm. And we did. We just did it exactly as Nuno had planned, I'm assuming, with his kind of substitutions he put on. And yeah, it was just great. But yeah, he defies the statistics. You're right, Greg. He's the guy who says, I'm an eye test keeper. I'm not a statistic keeper. Right. And you can clearly see that evidence by today.
So just give us your final thoughts on the match, Jamie. And in your thoughts, I want you to let us know what your thoughts are on Milenkovic and Murillo. I mean, I think I already know what you're going to say, but I want to hear what you got. I want to hear you say it because I thought, I mean, it is a brick wall, those two. I thought, I mean, Murillo, oh my God, what a player. Milenkovic, I just love him so much. Also, a bit of a harsh red. Was it a harsh red for Jed Spence? I don't know. Probably deserved, but I mean, if you throw the ball away, you get a second yellow. Jota makes the most of it, and off he goes. I don't really want to see Jed Spence getting sent off, really. I love the guy for what he did for us. I want nothing but good things for him, unless he's playing against us, of course. So, final thoughts on the match. Tell us what you think about Milenkovic and Murillo, and anything else that you want to sum up.
Well, I mean, over the course of the game, I thought that Forest really grew into it well. The goal was really well worked. That's Elanga's bread and butter, isn't it? Really, that's what he does. I thought that we, as you said earlier in the podcast, we were really calculated with our attacks. We didn't rush because we know that Tottenham also like to go forward very quickly. If we did lose the ball, we were quick to regain possession, which is something that I think we've really done well this season. Possession recovery, which is something that I criticised last season. We didn't do enough of. This season we're smashing it. And that kind of brings me on to the point about Murillo and Milenkovic just being so good. And I'm so excited every time we get the opportunity to talk about them because, £35 million, that would get you maybe one player from X team. Well, we got Milenkovic for 12 million and Murillo for 11 million. You do the maths. It's bugger all, really. So we've got two, potentially very, very potentially world-class centre-backs there. At some point, I think they've both got a very high ceiling. Even Milenkovic is a bit older, but he's only 27. I think he's future captain material for me. He's got it all. And my 8-year-old cousin, I just bought him a Forest shirt and he was sitting there watching it and he went, "Who's that one, the number 5?" I said, "That's Murillo." And he went, "He's very good, isn't he?" And I went, "Oh yeah." Oh yeah. And so when you've got a 9-year-old spotting out who the best player is, it says enough. But Murillo is a joy to watch because he wins the ball back, he plays with such a confidence and such a charisma that is so exciting to watch. And I don't feel nervous when a player comes into the box and we need to make a last-ditch tackle because that's what Murillo does. And he just doesn't mess it up. So special. These are special times. And these are the two best centre-backs I've seen in my time watching Forest. And I love Felipe so much because he was brilliant. But Milenkovic and Murillo, just ahead for me. But on Jed Spence as well, as you said, I echo what you said. I want him to do well. He's a really nice lad. And I've got no ill feeling for him wanting to join, at the time, a bigger club higher up in the table. But how the turns table and all that, as Michael Scott said. But for the yellow cards, by the letter of the law, that's just how it goes. I think you kick the ball away, it's a yellow. You take Jota Silva down like that, it's a malicious foul. For me, it is 2 yellows. It's not something we want to see, but that's it. And I think that sums up Spurs' season really. A 1-0 loss and 2 yellows. It's just they haven't been good enough. So Forest the better team, and the only way is up, boys.
So just a few things to show you on the screen. If you're watching this on YouTube, the form table since October the 21st, Forest are top of that, having played 11 and 24 points. Admittedly, I think that's going to be updated because Liverpool are about to beat Leicester. They're 2-1 up. But, we'll still be top if they do that. The form is there for everyone to see. In our last 11 games, we've won 8 of them. It's pretty incredible, really. Another nice stat that this is the first time that Forest have won 4 in a row during the festive period since 1995. So the 2-1 win against Villa, the 3-2 win against Manchester United, the 2-0 win at Brentford, and the 1-0 win today against Spurs puts us, for the moment, 3rd in the Premier League table. With Arsenal to play tomorrow, I expect them to probably win. A point would be enough for them to go back above us on goal difference. We're just going to have to see what happens. We've spoken a lot about the European dream and where it may or may not take us. But, beating Spurs at home at City Ground today was another milestone for Forest as we forge ourselves into an absolutely steadfast Premier League club. All right, time for a quick break.
This York shop is a cheese lover's paradise. Based on Grape Lane, the Cheese Trader is home to a wide range of beautiful specialty cheeses, including its scrumptious camembert and famous charcoal cheddar. Plus, there's some delicious relishes and chutneys to pair with your favorite bite. Not just selling it, the Cheese Trader offers a high-level, tasty and delightful street food menu. Try their loaded fries and hot cheese toasty, and their posh cheese on toast is sure to be the best you've ever had. Owned by Forest fan Stu Freestone, the Cheese Trader proudly sponsors Talking Reds, and you can enjoy 10% off every order you place simply by quoting Talking Reds in person, on email or through Instagram. The Cheese Trader and Talking Reds, cheesy as hell.
Yes, indeed. The Cheese Trader, Stu Freestone, sponsor of our podcast. Great guy. He's had a busy year, and we hope 2025 will be busy still. Get your cheese off him, get your discount. You know what to do by now, I'm sure. All right, let's talk about Everton coming up on a Sunday. The game's coming thick and fast in the festive period, Richard. And it can be a spell where your season can be made or broken, make or break. I think that's what I'm trying to say. It's make or break time. And Forest just won 4 in a row. I mean, I'm looking for another win at Goodison. It's our last ever trip to Goodison Park before they move into their new stadium next season. They grabbed a draw at Manchester City today. They were 1-0 down. They got back to a 1-1. Haaland then went on to miss a penalty. I mean, if ever there's a complete turnaround in a player, I guess. I mean, he's not scoring. Man City aren't winning. Sean Dyche seems to know how to play against Forest. You know, I wonder, is that because he covets us? I sometimes wonder, is it because he lives in the city? And I feel that if there was a job that he would really want one day, it would be the Forest job. But that's another thing altogether. But he does seem to know how to deal with us, or it certainly was that way last season. I just think, Richard, we are that different animal that I've mentioned a few times this year. Something's changed. We're not the same old Forest that the wheels come off and we, score 3 goals and then get pulled back to 3-3 or lose 4-3. We're seeing games out. We're being very intelligent about the way we play in terms of who we're playing against. So talk to me about the Everton game coming up, and talk to me about what you'd like to see in terms of formation and shape and personnel. No Yates, he's suspended. Nico Dominguez will be back available. So what are you thinking?
You go with what you went with today, and I think you play with the same approach as you did today, because while they're a different team, and I think Dan was the one who said they like to try to take your best elements away from you, right? They try to eliminate something of what you do that has been successful. The thing I like about the way that we operate this season is everything you just mentioned. So firstly, it just sort of seems to be a trend with us. We're a really good away team. So we've struggled with them. We haven't beaten them since 1999, right? Since it's just such a bizarre thing to think about these teams where we've gone decades without having success. And then this season is the season where we seem to be bucking that trend, which is great. So, just innately, it tells you we probably have a significant opportunity, but it's down to what you mentioned, the way that we manage ourselves on the pitch, the way that we don't allow ourselves to get defeated when things happen that are probably not anticipated, where we maybe make mistakes and we allow them to have gaps and moments to take advantage of those things. And I just don't see that. I see us having a lot more mental fortitude, as I mentioned earlier, a lot more discipline. Plus, we have quality on the pitch as well from a personnel standpoint. It's not like we're fielding something that shouldn't be competitive, because it is at this stage. So I think we have everything. All the ingredients are there. I think you eliminate the threat. I thought Kulusevski wasn't that great in the Tottenham match. I mean, he was okay. He did some decent things, but he wasn't as impactful as, say, Odegaard was when we played Arsenal. But you take that McNeil out of the equation, because it seems like he's the one guy that always causes problems for us. You defend him well. You keep your shape well. You don't, allow them to any room. And I think I think we could possibly beat them and beat them soundly, because I just don't think that they've changed so much from who they are from the previous 2 seasons to such a degree that you think, wow, they're suddenly going to start playing a better form of football. They just aren't. But they are difficult to score on. but they also don't score a lot of goals. So that bodes well for us. I mean, when they're not a high scoring team, even those high scoring teams like we faced, like Tottenham and Brentford, for example, didn't do anything. So I think there's every reason to believe from a confidence standpoint and just how we operate to believe we're gonna beat these guys pretty soundly. It's Sunday, right? I think is when the match is. Yeah.
So you're saying you're going still 4-2-3-1 with no Yates available.
Neco.
You're bringing Dominguez into the midfield.
Yeah, I bring him in because I think he defensively he's pretty phenomenal, right? From statistically, he's better than Yates. Different style of player, not as physical, clearly. But even their midfield, like we've been saying with teams like Manchester United, they're not a physical team in the midfield. They don't even really play much through the middle. They significantly more attacking percentage on the right and the left, and McNeil is all over the place. If you look at his heat map, all over the place. I think everybody that we can field in the midfield and on the defensive back line can deal with him. So I think that's the key is we'll just continue to play what we do. Because I think when we play our game, and even though there might be slight deviations like we saw with Brentford in terms of formation and personnel and things like that, for the most part it pretty much stays stout. I think he kind of knows there's a few interchangeable pieces, but for the most part it's relatively the same starting 11 and the same way that we set up. Because we know when we play that way and we operate the way that we know we can, we have success. So why deviate from that? I don't think there's any reason to change it other than adding Dominguez into the mix.
What about you, Jamie? What are you thinking in terms of shape? Are you happy to stay 4-2-3-1? Because I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't be surprised if he went to the Brentford team, the formation that he played at Brentford, the 3-4-3, with no Yates available and Gibbs, White and Anderson in the middle, Morata coming back in. It wouldn't surprise me if we saw that. What are you thinking?
Well, I mean, I think that Sean Dyche likes to kind of play a 4-4-2 or a 4-4-1-1. So naturally, you need to be strong in the midfield. They're going to have the personnel in midfield unless we decide to change. But I think with the way we're playing at the moment, we almost play with 4 in midfield anyway because Hudson-Odoi is dropping deeper and Williams going higher. So I am quite tempted to keep it how we are. I don't think that attacking-wise they've got the threat that would mean we need to go to a 3 at the back necessarily, but I don't think either are bad options. I feel quite safe in both. I just think that I'd rather start with a 4-2-3-1, assess where we are at half-time and decide whether that's a 60th minute sort of job to go to a 3 at the back. I think the biggest thing with Everton is that we keep our level and our standards to how it's been and not sink to theirs, because that's always the thing that Forest struggle with. They don't actually play to the standard they should be because they sink down to Everton's, and that's no disrespect to Everton because I think as a club, fair play to them and a historic club, and I do like Sean Dyche, but what they do is they will try and drag you down to how they play, a sort of dirty, sort of rough type of football that isn't particularly fun to watch, and that's why we did so poorly when we were last at Goodison Park. So I think as long as we stick to our game plan and we are keeping to the roles that we've done so well in recently, especially today, then we'll be fine. But it's about keeping our standard, keeping consistency. And I'd go 4-2-3-1, have someone like Dominguez in there that's such a hard worker, and go for that. So I think that'd be a really, really big game, and it will tell us a lot about our season because they are a tough defensive block to break down. If you're still scoring goals against them, I'll give them that respect because they are a really, really tough defensive unit.
Everton this season, they're in 16th. They've had 3 wins, 8 draws, 6 defeats. So, they're still a team that aren't doing so well in terms of league position. I think they'll be safe this year. I don't think there's going to be any chance of them going down. And as much as the kind of arsehole in me might find it quite funny for them to play in their new stadium in the Championship. Actually, I've got no ill feeling towards Everton, and they're a Premier League side, and I wish them well in their new stadium next season. I know they've been after it for a long while, but I just think that they're the kind of team that can cause us problems, as you say, even with the way we're playing. This could be one of those banana skins. Paul Morley has said repeatedly in our group chat that he would take a point now. He's saying they're going to be a gnarly team to play against. It's going to be a tough one. And I was like, well, the way we're playing, I think I want the win. I think we can win. But I think the closer it gets, I kind of think I'm maybe moving a bit more towards Paul's thinking. We can't win every game, can we? Can we? I mean, I'm sure we can, but
We can.
will we? Are we going to win every game? I mean, with Everton next, and then Wolves, and then Liverpool, isn't it? I think they're the next three. You know, Wolves have just beaten Man United today, 2-0. I mean, but they're still in the bottom three. They've got their new manager. He's won their first 2 games, his first 2 games in charge. So they're going to still be, you know, potentially building up a bit of momentum. What I don't want is for us to not get a draw at Everton and then pick up a draw at Wolves, and then we got Liverpool coming to City Ground, who I'm certain that we can get a win against. I know that people think, well, you're just being a biased Forest fan. But hey, listen, we've beaten them away. We're the only team that's done that. You know, we're going up against these teams and matching them, and defensively we are solid. So I go into this Everton game feeling like the win is there for us. I worry about... do I worry? What I'm trying to say is the set pieces is where Everton, I think, are going to probably try and hurt us. And previously, we would have always been quite fragile about that. Obviously, we've sorted that out big time this season. I just like that security of Morata, I think, with the back three. That's what I'm thinking. I just kind of feel like that pragmatic approach might be the way to go. Listen, I'm all in on Dominguez coming in because I think he's, you know, I'm in love with the guy. I think he's fantastic. But, you know, and he would be a perfect fit to replace Yates and keep it as is, 43-1. But just part of me feels like maybe it's just one of those games where the back three works with Neco and Ola Aina overloading. And I think defensively they're there to be got at. And they don't have an awful lot coming forwards. So I just kind of wonder how they might score against us outside of set pieces, Richard. Am I doing Everton a dirty there? I mean, they don't strike me as a free scoring team. They scored against City today, but you know, how are you when it comes to take a point now? Would you take a point now?
I mean, I'll take it over a loss, clearly, but
no. But I mean, if someone says I'm going to give you a point,
I would be disappointed. Not so much that it's not about streaks. I mean, yeah, it's always great to win 5 in a row, and that would mean that we've won 9 out of the last 12 matches, which is incredible. I think it's more just matchups. They don't strike. They don't fear. I'm not as afraid from a matchup standpoint because it's, as you've stated, we can take advantage on set pieces on both sides of the pitch if we leverage something like Morata. I mean, you saw Milinkovic today, you know, rotate and find space to potentially get a goal. He's probably a little bit disappointed that he didn't because he had a free header, but he's starting to elevate his game on that side of it. And we know how we've done. We're the second, you know, best at defending set pieces in the Premier League. They're the second worst at scoring in the Premier League. So they're very susceptible, and I just don't see anything that they're going to field. I mean, Branthwaite at one time was being lauded as, you know, potential fringe England player, and to be honest with you, I haven't really followed how he's played, but he's obviously a very talented footballer, and he's a young guy, and he's got some height to him and so forth. But there's nothing about where they play and who they field to me that's of major concern. As I've said, the only one that I think we've had historical issues with is McNeil, and I think that's probably where your concerns come from, because we're just used to them being a pain in the ass, you know, yeah. And just putting and being difficult to work over, like we seem to have been able to do at certain intervals, even with the lesser talented teams that we've seen under Cooper. We've been able to beat teams like Arsenal and Chelsea and Manchester United and so on and so forth. It's just that with the teams like these or Wolves or Bournemouth, you know, we've struggled a little bit. And I think we've sort of, like, as I mentioned earlier, I think we've started to sort of move out of that, because I think the way that we play in terms of not allowing ourselves to get too impacted by, you know, different things that go on through the flow of the match, and then start to get down on ourselves, begin to doubt, and, you know, allow mistakes to happen, allow those goals to happen in a late game situation or injury time. That's just not been what we've been doing this season. And so I think by virtue of that, it gives us an advantage, coupled with, I just think what we're putting on the pitch is better than what they have. And we should be beating teams like that. We're third in the Premier League. Even if we end up fourth by the end of this weekend, we're still a better football team than they are, and we should be beating them. And we are a better away team. I think we're the second best away team in the Premier League, right? So there's just nothing to suggest that we can't do it. That's why I probably have built myself up to this point where I'm like, I need that 3 points, because there's no way that we should be losing to these guys. By everything on paper tells us that we shouldn't. And so I think we'll have the mindset. I think Nuno will have them ready to go, knowing has happened in the past. He'll have them primed and ready to take those 3 points on Sunday.
I don't think it will happen. But because the games are coming thick and fast, it wouldn't surprise me if he starts Taiwo, going back to him. It could be a game for Taiwo with his kind of bullying physical presence. What do you think, Jamie? I think what I'm trying to do is in this schedule, I'm trying to make a case for Taiwo getting some minutes and getting a start. And now we've beaten Spurs. I'm looking at the next 3 games as the next block. And how many points do I want out of the next 3? I mean, I want 6 points as a minimum out of the next 3. That's probably a win against Everton and a win against Wolves, albeit I think we can get something against Liverpool. But 6 points, I'll be happy. So I'm trying to make a case for Taiwo starting this, just to give Woody a break. He can always come off the bench. What do you think? If you see Taiwo starting, how are you feeling about that?
I don't mind it. I think there's a player there. So we know there's a player there that can score goals. And you need to be physical up against Tarkowski and the young lad we just mentioned a moment ago. His name's completely right. Branthwaite. That's it. You need someone who's really physical and puts his body about. So maybe slightly different in profile to Chris Wood, because Chris Wood holds the ball up more and he likes to do things a little bit different. But I wouldn't be against it. I think with especially fitness wise, you've got to be really careful with Chris Wood because he's a bit older in football terms anyway. So you've got to be really careful. But I wouldn't be against it. I think that Taiwo just needs a goal. I just feel like it's the number one thing we're saying, isn't it? He just needs a goal.
But I think he needs to start as well. I think if you're going to get that goal, he needs more than 5 minutes at the end of the game. And I kind of feel like this could just be a game for him to get a start, even if he comes off on 60 minutes, 65 minutes or so. We've got to start utilising our squad in this busy schedule. Otherwise, we could come unstuck. And we are literally playing Everton. It'll be our 19th game. It's the halfway point. We are literally at halfway. And as it stands, we're in 3rd. Arsenal are playing Ipswich tomorrow. So I think we expect them to beat Ipswich, right? So we're going to finish the game week in 4th. We are going to be, as I said, I think earlier, still 5 points, I think I said, again, ahead of Newcastle in 5th. So, we've got a little bit of a cushion building up. I don't want to get complacent, but, realistically, now we're one more game along. I think I ask this every podcast, Richard. But, I mean, a top 8 finish now really has got to be the target, don't you think?
Yeah, considering what the results are to date, I think you're going to be disappointed if you don't. Certainly in the top 10. And it's just amazing to continue to reflect on what we thought was going to happen when we did our preseason predictions, and thinking that we thought 12th was potentially kind of aggressive and maybe a little bit hyper positive, I guess, for lack of a better word, optimistic. But in reality, we've completely eliminated that being the case. And I think finishing outside the top 10 would be a massive disappointment. And I just think the way that Nuno has developed the team, the kind of chemistry that he's developed, the players that he has, and it's a nice blend of sort of experience and youth, and it's just, I think he's really helped bring these guys along, and they're all playing very confidently. I mean, when you still win 1-0 against Spurs, and Ola Aina has probably one of his worst games of the season, you're in a pretty good place, right? Because he just did. It's incredible to think about, but yeah, anything outside the top 10, I think, would be a bit of a disappointment given where we're at right now.
Quieter games. I'll have maybe one of his less impactful games.
Relatively speaking, yes. He was only a 6.5 out of 10 instead of an 8, Yeah.
But going to wrap things up very shortly, guys. But Jamie, I want to ask you, who's your player of the season so far?
Oh, what a question. I'm going for Ola Aina, but I'm going to, do you know what? I'm going to throw his name in the hat as a close second, Matt Sells.
Really? That's interesting. I mean, I like that because I think there's a few players that could be getting a mention. I mean, for me, it's Milenkovic. I think the impact that he's had on the team has been extraordinary and has brought the best out of players like Matt Sells and Murillo. We have been releasing a stats series called Into the Forest. Episode 3 was released today. That's the one that Paul Morley leads on. And he's talking about Nuno and the last 12 months under Nuno and how things have changed. And he gets into a few data-driven areas, comparing him to a little bit of the sort of last days of Cooper and so on. So that is out and available. And then you've got Richards coming up. He's going to be chatting about the superstar that is Morgan Gibbs-White and comparing him to a few other number 10s in the Premier League. That one will be released in the next few days. And then to bring up the rear, it's myself. And I am doing a piece on Milenkovic just to put that case forward. I think he's our best signing in the last 25 years. And so I get into a bit more detail about Milenkovic in that episode. So please do keep your eyes peeled for that. Brings us to the end of this one. It's Boxing Day, and Jamie, you've been ever so good to come and join us. There's a lot of late call. Me and Richard were going to go solo on this one, and I thought I'll ask Jamie. Maybe Jamie's around, and sure enough, yeah, let's do it, guys. So, Jamie, let's sign off for us with any closing thoughts on what you saw today and how you're looking forward to the Everton game.
No, thank you guys for having me on. Always a pleasure. Yeah, it was a brilliant win. Another reason to keep smiling. Shout out to Chris Kamara, by the way, as well. We haven't mentioned him, but he's back on the telly. So, really good to see him back. And also just nice to see him kind of raising awareness of speech disorders, which is really nice because there's people that do struggle with it that don't think they can make it in that sort of career. And he's kind of proving you can. So, good luck to him. But yeah, just a really nice day. The mist really did roll in. It was a memorable one, wasn't it, on Boxing Day? They haven't lost for 16 years on Boxing Day, by the way, Tottenham Hotspur. So Forest are breaking records here, there and everywhere. No matter what happens against Everton, I'm very happy with how the season starts. But to be honest, I want more than a point against Everton. I want 3. I go into every game wanting to win.
What's your Everton score prediction?
Oh, I'm gonna go 3-1 Forest. That's what I'm going to go for.
Amazing. Richard, give us your closing thoughts. Give us your Everton score prediction as well.
So score prediction. Yeah, that's 2-0. I'm gonna go 2-0. I think we get another clean sheet. I was teeing it up. I'm like, all right, here we go. 2-0 to Forest. I think we finally beat these guys at Goodison, and we're gonna get another clean sheet at them because they just don't score a lot of goals. The other thing I would say is just it's amazing to me every single week. We keep coming back and do these podcasts, and I keep getting blown away by how this club is performing. I shouldn't be at this point. Why should I? But at the same time, I mean, just the way that they are performing as a unit, the way that the managers, how well he's pressing those buttons at the right times, the substitutions, and there's just substitutions that are just there to kind of see things out every single time. There's actually some impact there too, which is incredible. Just can't be more happy to see what we're seeing right now. And I have fully converted to the European Dream Tracker. I am absolutely 100% certain we're going to get there. And so, and I'm even keeping a glimmer of hope that there's a potential Premier League title run here at some point in the near future. I know this is a bit ambitious and probably completely mental on my part, but hey, we're only 4 points behind where Leicester was in 2015, 2016 at this time. So at the same time of the year. So dare to dream.
Well, thanks ever so much, mate. Liverpool have beaten Leicester 3-1, so they remain top. I think the title challenge is not quite going to happen this year, but we might be in the conversation come the end of it. You never know. It's been a fantastic Boxing Day win for Forest at the City Ground, beating Spurs 1-0. We look forward to Sunday. Come on, you Reds. Thanks for being with us. This is Talking Reds. We'll see you soon.